Welcome back, my friends. Is this our 7th week together? And guess what? I have heard you. I've gotten so many comments about speaking up, and that I guess I get reading and I get a little bit quiet. So guess what I got? A microphone. So I hope that the sound quality is better, and that even if I get a little into the book and a little quieter, hopefully the sound quality is better. We're still reading Tuesdays with Morrie, and actually we're more than halfway through. We're almost through with this book. I hope that you're enjoying it. I sure enjoy sharing it with you and hearing the great comments back. If you're liking this series, Gena's book Nook, please give me a like down here and follow along. We are on the 8th Tuesday. We talk about money. I held up the newspaper so that Morrie could see it. I don't want my tombstone to read, "I never owned a network." Morrie laughed, then shook his head. The morning sun was coming through the window behind him, falling on the pink flowers of the hibiscus plant that sat on the sill. The quote was from Ted Turner, the billionaire media mogul, founder of CNN, who had been lamenting his inability to snatch up the CBS network in a corporate mega deal. I had brought the story to Morrie this morning because I wondered if Turner ever found himself in my old professor's position, his breath disappearing, his body turning to stone, his days being crossed off the calendar one by one. Would he really be crying over owning a network? "It's all part of the same problem, Mitch," Morrie said. "We put our values in the wrong things, and it leads to very disillusioned lives. I think we should talk about that." Morrie was focused. There were good days and bad days now. He was having a good day. The night before, he had been entertained by a local a cappella group that had come to the house to perform, and he relayed the story excitedly, as if the ink spots themselves had dropped by for a visit. Morrie's love for music was strong even before he got sick, but now it was so intense it moved him to tears. He would listen to opera sometimes at night, closing his eyes, riding along with the magnificent voices as they dipped and soared. "You should have heard this group last night, Mitch. Such a sound." Morrie had always been taken with simple pleasures, singing, laughing, dancing, which I want to tell you all is something every one of us can do, even if we're not good at it. Now more than ever, material things held little or no significance. When people die, you always hear the expression, "You can't take it with you." Morrie seemed to know that a long time ago. "We got a form of brainwashing going on in our country," Morrie sighed. "Do you know how they brainwash people? They repeat something over and over. And that's what we do in this country." Okay, guys, I've got to stop right there, because we have had some crazy things going on in our world, in our nation, in our country in the last few months. And that just makes me look at things in a whole different light. Things that are repeated over and over and over again, which kind of makes me just want to turn off the news, if you know what I mean. Sorry, I'm taking all these editorial little ADD sidebars. Just keep with me, okay? All right, he says, they repeat something over and over, and that's what we do in this country. Owning things is good. More money is good. More property is good. More commercialism is good. More is good. More is good. We repeat it and have it repeated to us over and over until nobody bothers to even think otherwise. The average person is so fogged up by all this, he has no perspective on what's really important anymore. Wherever I went in my life, I met people wanting to gobble up something new, gobble up a new car, gobble up a new piece of property, gobble up the latest toy, and then they wanted to tell you all about it. Guess what I got? Guess what I got? You know how I always interpreted that? These were people so hungry for love that they were accepting substitutes. They were embracing material things and expecting a sort of hug back. But it never works. You can't substitute material things for love, or for gentleness, or for tenderness, or for a sense of comradeship. Money is not a substitute for tenderness, and power is not a substitute for tenderness. I can tell you, as I'm sitting here dying, when you need it, neither money nor power will give you the feeling you're looking for, no matter how much of them you have. I glanced around Morrie's study. It was the same today as it had been the first day I had arrived. The books held their same places on the shelves. The papers cluttered the same old desk. The outside rooms had not been improved or upgraded. In fact, Morrie really hadn't bought anything new except medical equipment in a long, long time, maybe years. The day he learned that he was terminally ill was the last day he lost interest in his purchasing power. So the TV was the same old model. The car that Charlotte drove was the same old model. The dishes and the silverware and the towels, all the same. And yet the house had changed so drastically. It had filled with love and teaching and communication. It had filled with friendship and family and honesty and tears. It had filled with colleagues and students and meditation teachers and therapists and nurses and a cappella groups. It had become, in a very real way, a wealthy home, even though Morrie's bank account was rapidly depleting. There's a big confusion in this country over what we want versus what we need, Morrie said. You need food. You want a chocolate sundae. You have to be honest with yourself. You don't need the latest sports car. You don't need the biggest house. The truth is, you don't get satisfaction from those things. You know what really gives you that satisfaction? What? Offering others what you have to give. You sound like a Boy Scout. I don't mean money, Mitch. I mean your time, your concern, your storytelling. It's not so hard. There's a senior center that opened near here. Dozens of elderly people come there every day. If you're a young man or a young woman and you have a skill, you're asked to come and teach it. Say you know computers. You come there and teach them computers. You're very welcome there, and they are very grateful. We know this, don't we, guys? This is how you start to get respect, by offering something that you have. There are plenty of places to do this. You don't need to have a big talent. There are lonely people in hospitals and shelters who only want some companionship. You play cards with a lonely older man and you find new respect for yourself because you are needed. Remember what I said about finding a meaningful life? I wrote it down, but now I can recite it. Devote yourself to loving others. Devote yourself to your community around you. And devote yourself to creating something that gives you purpose and meaning. You notice, he added, grinning, there's nothing in there about a salary. I jotted some of the things Morrie was saying on a yellow pad. I did this mostly because I didn't want him to see my eyes, to know what I was thinking, that I had been, for much of my life since graduation, pursuing these very things he had been railing against. Bigger toys, nicer house. Because I worked among rich and famous athletes, I convinced myself that my needs were realistic, my greed inconsequential compared to theirs. This was a smokescreen. Morrie made that obvious. Mitch, if you're trying to show off for people at the top, forget it. They'll look down at you anyhow. And if you're trying to show off for people at the bottom, forget it. They'll only envy you. Status will get you nowhere. Only an open heart will allow you to float equally between everyone. He paused, then looked at me. I'm dying, right? Yes. Why do you think it's so important for me to hear other people's problems? Don't I have enough pain and suffering of my own? Of course I do, but giving to other people is what makes me feel alive. Not my car or my house, not what I look like in the mirror. When I give my time, when I can make someone smile after they were feeling sad, it's as close to healthy as I ever feel. Do the kinds of things that come from the heart. When you do, you won't be dissatisfied. You won't be envious. You won't be longing for somebody else's things. On the contrary, you'll be overwhelmed with what comes back. He coughed and reached for the small bell that lay on the chair. He had to poke a few times at it, and I finally picked it up and put it in his hand. Thank you, he whispered. He shook it weakly, trying to get Connie's attention. This Ted Turner guy, Morrie said. He couldn't think of anything else for his tombstone. Mahatma Gandhi said, each night when I go to sleep, I die. And the next morning, when I wake up, I am reborn. The ninth Tuesday, we talk about how love goes on. The leaves had begun to change color, turning the ride through West Newton into a portrait of gold and rust. Back in Detroit, the labor war has stagnated, with each side accusing the other of failing to communicate. The stories on the TV news were just as depressing. In rural Kentucky, 3 men threw pieces of a tombstone off a bridge, smashing the windshield of a passing car, killing a teenage girl who was traveling with her family on a religious pilgrimage. In California, the O.J. Simpson trial was heading toward a conclusion, and the whole country seemed to be obsessed. Even in airports, there were hanging TV sets tuned to CNN so that you could get an O.J. update as you made your way to a gate. I'd tried calling my brother in Spain several times. I left messages saying that I really wanted to talk to him, that I'd been doing a lot of thinking about us. A few weeks later, I got back a short message saying everything was okay, but he was sorry. He really didn't feel like talking about being sick. For my old professor, it was not the talk of being sick, but the being sick itself that was sinking him. Since my last visit, a nurse had inserted a catheter into his penis, which drew the urine out through a tube and into a bag that sat on the foot of his chair. His legs needed constant tending. He could still feel pain, even though he could not move them. Another one of ALS's cruel little ironies. And unless his feet dangled just the right number of inches off the foam pads, it felt as if someone were poking him with a fork. In the middle of conversations, Morrie would have to ask visitors to lift his foot and move it just an inch or two to adjust his head so that he could fit more easily into the palm of the colored pillows. Could you imagine being unable to move your own head? With each visit, Morrie seemed to be melting into his chair, his spine taking on its shape. Still, every morning he insisted on being lifted from his bed and wheeled to his study, deposited there among his books and papers and the hibiscus plant on the windowsill. In typical fashion, he found something philosophical in this. I sum it up in my newest aphorism, he said. Let me hear it. When you're in bed, you're dead. He smiled. Only Morrie could smile at something like that. He'd been getting calls from the Nightline people and from Ted Koppel himself. They want to come and do another show with me, he said, but they say they want to wait. Until what? You're on your last breath? Maybe. Anyhow, I'm not so far away. Don't say that. I'm sorry. That bugs me, that they'll want to wait until you wither. It bugs you because you look out for me. He smiled. Mitch, maybe they are using me for a little drama. That's okay. Maybe I'm using them too. They help me get my message to millions of people. I couldn't do that without them, right? So it's a compromise. He coughed, which turned into a long, drawn-out gargle, ending with another glob into a crushed tissue. Anyhow, Morrie said, I told them they'd better not wait too long because my voice won't be there. Once this thing hits my lungs, talking may become impossible. I can't speak for too long without needing a rest now. I've already canceled a lot of the people who want to see me. Mitch, there are so many. But I'm too fatigued. If I can't give them the right attention, I can't help them. I looked at the tape recorder, feeling guilty, as if I were stealing what was left of his precious speaking time. Should we skip it? I asked. Will it make you too tired? Morrie shut his eyes and shook his head. He seemed to be waiting for some silent pain to pass. No, he finally said. You and I have to go on. This is our last thesis together, you know. Our last thesis. We want to get it right. I thought about our first thesis together in college. It was Morrie's idea, of course. He told me I was good enough to write an honors project, something I had never considered. Now here we were, doing the same thing once more, starting with an idea. Dying man talks to living man, tells him what he should know. This time I was in less of a hurry to finish. Someone asked me an interesting question yesterday, Morrie said now, looking over my shoulder at the wall hanging behind me, a quilt of hopeful messages that friends had stitched for him on his 70th birthday. Every patch on the quilt had a different message. Stay the course. The best is yet to be. Morrie, always know. Oh, I lied. Morrie, always number one in mental health. What was the question I asked? If I worried about being forgotten after I died. Well, do you? I don't think I will be. I've got so many people who've been involved with me in close, intimate ways, and love is how you stay alive, even after you are gone. Sounds like a song lyric. Love is how you stay alive. Morrie chuckled. Maybe. But Mitch, all this talk that we're doing, do you ever hear my voice sometimes when you're back home? When you're all alone? Maybe on the plane, maybe in your car? Yes, I admitted. Then you will not forget me after I'm gone. Think of my voice, and I'll be there. Think of your voice. And if you want to cry a little, it's okay. Morrie, he had wanted to make me cry since I was a freshman. One of these days I'm going to get you to, he would say. Yeah, I would answer. I decided what I want on my tombstone, he said. I don't want to hear about your tombstone. Why? They make you nervous? I shrugged. We can forget it. No, go ahead. What did you decide? Morrie popped his lips. I was thinking of this. A teacher to the last. He waited while I absorbed it. A teacher to the last. Good, he said. Yes, I said. Very good. I came to love the way Laurie lit up when I entered the room. He did this for many people, I know, but it was his special talent to make each visitor feel that the smile was unique. Ah, it's my buddy, he would say when he saw me in that foggy, high-pitched voice. And it didn't stop with the greeting. When Morrie was with you, he was really with you. He looked you straight in the eye and he listened as if you were the only person in the world. How much better would people get along if their first encounter each day were like this, instead of a grumble from a waitress or a bus driver or a boss? I believe in being fully present, Morrie said. That means you should be with the person you're with. When I'm talking to you now, Mitch, I try to keep focused only on what is going on between us. I'm not thinking about something we said last week. I'm not thinking about what's coming up this Friday. I'm not thinking about doing another couple show or about what medication I'm taking. I am talking to you, and I'm thinking about you. I remember how we used to teach this idea in the group process class back at Brandy's. I had scoffed back then, thinking this was hardly a lesson plan for a university course. Learning to pay attention? How important could that be? I now know it is more important than almost everything they taught us in college. Morrie motioned for my hand, and I gave it to him. I felt a surge of guilt. Here was a man who, if he wanted, could spend every waking moment in self-pity, feeling his body for decay, counting his breaths. So many people with far smaller problems are so self-absorbed, their eyes glaze over if you speak for more than 30 seconds. They already have something else in mind, a friend to call, a fax to send, a lover they're daydreaming about. They only snap back to full attention when you finish talking, at which point they say, yeah, really? And fake their way back to the moment. Part of the problem, Mitch, is that everyone is in such a hurry. Morrie said people haven't found meaning in their lives, so they're running all the time looking for it. They think the next car, the next house, the next job, then they find those things and they're empty too. And they keep running. Once you start running, I said, it's hard to slow yourself down. Not so hard, he said, shaking his head. Do you know what I do? When someone wants to get ahead of me in traffic, when I used to be able to drive, I would raise my hand. He tried to do this now, but the hand lifted weakly, only 6 inches. I would raise my hand as if I was going to make a negative gesture. And then I would wave and smile. Instead of giving them the finger, you let them go, and you smile. You know what? A lot of times they smile back. The truth is, I don't have to be in that much of a hurry with my car. I'd rather put my energies into people. He did this better than anyone I had ever known. Those who sat with him saw his eyes go moist when they spoke about something horrible, or crinkle in delight when they told him a really bad joke. He was always ready to openly display the emotions so often missing from my baby boomer generation. We are great at small talk. What do you do? Where do you live? But really listening to someone without trying to sell them something, pick them up, recruit them, or get some kind of status in return? How often do we get this anymore? I believe many visitors in the last few months of Morrie's life were drawn not because of the attention they wanted to pay to him, but because of the attention he paid to them. Despite his personal pain and decay, this little old man listened the way they always wanted someone to listen. I told him he was the father everyone wishes they had. Well, he said, closing his eyes, I have some experience in that area. The last time Morrie saw his own father was in a city morgue. Charlie Schwartz was a quiet man who liked to read his newspaper alone under a street lamp on Tremont Avenue in the Bronx. Every night when Morrie was little, Charlie would go for a walk after dinner. He was a small Russian man with a ruddy complexion and a full head of grayish hair. Morrie and his brother David would look out the window and see him leaning against the lamppost, and Morrie wished he could come inside and talk to them. But he rarely did. Nor did he tuck them in, nor kiss them good night. Morrie always swore he would do these things for his own children if he ever had any, and years later, when he had them, he did. Meanwhile, as Morrie raised his own children, Charlie was still living in the Bronx. He still took that walk, he still read the paper, and one night he went outside after dinner a few blocks from home. He was accosted by 2 robbers. "Give us your money," one said, pulling a gun. Frightened, Charlie threw down his wallet and began to run. He ran through the streets and kept running until he reached the steps of a relative's house, where he collapsed on the porch. Heart attack. He died that night. Morrie was called to identify the body. He flew to New York and went to the morgue. He was taken downstairs to the cold room where the corpses were kept. "Is this your father?" the attendant asked. Morrie looked at the body behind the glass, the body of the man who had scolded him and molded him and taught him to work, who had been quiet when Morrie wanted him to speak, who had told Morrie to swallow his memories of his mother when he wanted to share them with the world. He nodded and he walked away. The horror of the room, he would later say, sucked all other functions out of him. He did not cry until days later. Still, his father's death helped prepare Morrie for his own. This much he knew. There would be lots of holding and kissing and talking and laughter, and no goodbyes left unsaid. All the things he missed with his father and his mother. When the final moment came, Morrie wanted his loved ones around him. Knowing what was happening, no one would get a phone call or a telegram or have to look through a glass window in some cold and foreign basement. In the South American rainforest, there is a tribe called the Desana, who see the world as a fixed quantity of energy that flows between all creatures. Every birth must therefore engender a death, and every death bring forth another birth. This way, the energy of the world remains complete. When they hunt for food, the Desana know that the animal they kill will leave a hole in the spiritual well. But that hole will be filled, they believe, by the souls of the Desana hunters when they die. Were there no men dying, there would be no birds or fish being born. I like this idea. Morrie likes it too. The closer he gets to goodbye, the more he seems to feel we are creatures in the same forest. What we take, we must replenish. It's only fair, he says. We're going to stop there today. Really, I think we only have one more time in this book. I really don't want it to end because the end means that Morrie's life ends. But also what I'm learning in this book is that all of our lives end. It's not news to me. I am fully aware that I'm not invincible, that my time here on earth and your time here on earth is limited. What are we doing with it? Are we paying attention to the person who's right in front of us? Are we giving them what they need? Or is our mind flittering elsewhere? Please take this lesson from Morrie, these many lessons, but especially today. I've got to say right before this, I arrived here early so that I can record these and get a lot of work done before others are here in the office. I was working on some programming and trying to find just the right picture to put with what I was creating, and I came across some pictures that were my grandparents. Pictures that my grandfather took. And oh, how I loved them. They were very much parents to me. They came from Italy. Got strong Italian stock. And they instilled so many wonderful values in me. What I wouldn't give to have one more day of holding my grandmother's hand. I called her Nonna, which is in Italian means grandmother. And when we held hands, she did this most annoying thing. Ever since I can remember, all the way from my earliest memories up until maybe days before she passed away. And she's been gone 20 years now. She would hold my hand and she would flick my fingernail of my thumb when we held hands. What I wouldn't give for one more flick of that fingernail. Those memories are so tender to me. I know that you all have those relationships in your life that you want to hold on to, and things that you hope those loved ones hold on to, memories of togetherness that you have. Please work on those. Make those important. Take the time. There's nothing more important than that. I hope you have a beautiful week, and I look forward to sharing the remainder of this book with you next week. Please leave some comments and let me know what you're thinking and what this is helping you learn. Talk to you soon. Until next week.